I think the important thing is that you make music that you want to make.
Good keys player, good drummer, and you're just like, what the are these people on?
The first time you find something is always the best. Doing something that you did 10, 20 years ago, it's never going to be as good.
UK garage, it's part of British culture and has been for a very long time. For somebody that's listening that doesn't know the extent of how powerful UK garage is for the UK dance scene, what is it to you? Like, what does it mean to you?
I think for me, UK garage is one of the kind of unique genres that came out of the UK. Along with kind of like drum and bass, dubstep, that kind of thing. It's one of these kind of unique genres that's just emerged from kind of like the 90s, basically. And I think it's, kind of captured a certain sentiment in the UK, and it's kind of, carried that forwards, and it's become like a bit more of a established genre now. I think
Yeah.
there was a bit of a flash at the beginning, but it kind of seems to have come back and been established as a bona fide genre now.
Yeah, it's definitely weird how I find it quite a lot in UK genres to a certain extent. Drum and bass being one of them that like they have moments in time where they're the hottest thing since sliced bread. And then it kind of falls off and then it kind of comes back around and then it falls off and then it comes back around. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but why do you think that is?
I think it's the same with lots of things, right? It's a bit of a roundabout. People kind of get into stuff and then it drops off. Certainly within music, I think there's kind of flashes of, vocal, kind of like more uplifting music. There'll be like, it's just like painting your bedroom, really, isn't it? It's different colors. There'll be piano house thing that always comes back. It's like a bit of a carousel of genres, I think. And I don't know whether it's kind of like the global feeling or it's what's going on in the environment. But yeah, these things seem to come around, and it's kind of nice when they do.
Yeah, do you notice a difference in your career when things come back around and go and come back around? You've been doing it
Mm,
for a long time, so I think
Yeah,
ebbs and flows, right, in
do you
every
know what?
career.
I'm kind of like fairly. I don't know what the word is, but I was going to say immune. But I've heard it so many times. People will say to me, "Oh yeah, 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 it's coming back. There's like a resurgence." And I'm kind of like, "What is there?"
Yeah.
Um, but I believe it does happen. But I wouldn't say I'm super sensitive to that. I think I just kind of make the music that I want to make.
Have you always done that? Because I think, like, when somebody's in an early part of their career, I feel like you kind of go with the wind, right? You go kind of with the way the industry's taken you, and then kind of find your slot. Like, how long did it take you to find where you sit in making music?
I kind of grew up classical,
Mm.
discovered computers when I was like a teenager. I was into drum and bass, or not drum and bass. I was into hardcore
Oh,
and,
really?
and the beginnings of jungle at the beginning, and hated garage and house. And it was really through me being like a studio engineer and like being on the buttons for other people that I discovered that I had like I don't know, aptitude for making stuff at like 130 as opposed to 165 or 170. So I think, I was at college, I went to uni, I was kind of doing studio stuff then, and then really I was a studio assistant after that. So I think my sound, it probably took, um, yeah, I'd say it was kind of like, I was like 24, 25 when I think I really kind of discovered my sort of talents.
How does going from classical music to rave culture, like, how does that even happen?
I mean, I've always been like a lover of extremes. I was kind of like singing in choirs and then doing graffiti at night kind of thing all the way through my kind of childhood. So I like kind of extremes. And I think really the classical music thing and then the dance music kind of rave thing were complete opposites. And I kind of get off on that. So I definitely think the music I make now is informed by obviously my classical upbringing. And it's not like they fight with each other. They definitely kind of inform each other.
Yeah, because I think it's really interesting because so many producers nowadays in electronic music, like, can't play instruments at all, right? I think you must come across that quite a lot being in studios and stuff.
Mm.
And it's actually really rare finding somebody that can actually, like, is classically trained. Do you think it's like a thing that everyone should do? I've always wanted to do it. I can play the keys slightly, but, like, every time have, like, piano lessons, I'm then just too lazy to just practice that often, and I'd rather just
Mm.
make a record.
Yeah, I think, like, learning an instrument like piano for me is definitely something that, should go on when you're kinda younger. It's easier then. I was kinda, like, encouraged, in inverted commas, by my parents to, practice and stuff. But I kind of I got the bug for it because I did, like, my first piano competition when I was 5, I think, or
Oh,
something, and I
wow.
won that as, like, a local thing. So I kind of, like, got a bit of a bug for that. But I don't think it's necessarily super necessary to play, and I think people who don't play, the grass is always greener. They think that, they'd be much better if they could play. I'm kinda I'm not so sure about that. I think, modern producers, they play their DAW, really. They're playing, like, with sound design, they're playing with arrangement, playing with that kind of thing. That is a form of playing as well. But I mean, obviously, I'm pretty glad that I have the chops and that I did all that stuff because, I can play anything really, which is good.
Yeah,
But only keys wise, I wish I could play guitar probably in the same way that you wish you could play keys, right?
yeah.
Um, I know I work with some guys in studios and they can just play everything, like step over to the drum
It's
kit, play
mental that.
that, play
Yeah.
bass, guitar, keys, everything.
Yeah, it's crazy when somebody and they're, like, really good at it, and you're like, "How have you had the time to, like, become a really good producer, a good singer, a good keys player, a good drummer?" And you're just like, "What the are these people on?"
Yeah,
It's
that's a lot
mental.
of, bedroom time, that is. I was probably playing,
True.
when it
Not
I
not
I
not
think
much
you
childhood.
yeah, I think you kinda look back and think, "What was I doing between the ages of, like, 10 and 18?" Something
Yeah.
like that, and I guess a lot of people would just, like, PlayStation or whatever, but,
Mm,
other people were sitting there in their bedroom with a bass guitar playing along to records or,
yeah.
doing a bit of the classical thing as well. But I think, like you say, I think it's a lot harder to learn, to play an instrument later on in life. I think it's the same with languages, right? There's some kind of stat saying that you're much more susceptible, much more open to learn languages below the age of 25 or something like that. And also, you're
100%.
in the
Yeah, yeah.
school system, and
Yeah.
you're kind of like you're in some kind of regime, some kind of framework, and really like learning an instrument can fit into that. It's just like another lesson, right? But when you're a bit older, you've got other stuff going on. You're an adult, you've got a life, so actually trying to find time for doing that is has to be a conscious effort.
One of my best mates is French, and he married an American. And they've been together like 8 years. And it's his pet peeve that she literally just can't speak a word of French, and no matter how hard she tries. And they're like
Right.
at the point where they're like, we're gonna have to move to France, and like you have to fully immerse yourself into the culture to even be able to learn the language because you're never gonna learn it in America. It's like
Yeah,
it's
true.
impossible. It's
Yeah,
impossible.
I fully believe that. I think to learn language, yeah, you need to like
Mm,
be in at the deep end, in the same way like learning an instrument, you need to well, you don't need to, but it certainly helps if you got your parents like bearing down on you.
I agree. I work quite closely with a guy called Mitch Jones. I don't know if you've ever worked with him.
No, I don't know him.
He's an insane keys player. Kind of like from looking back at some of like what you've done in the previous, he kind of had similar upbringing of he went to boarding school in Manchester at the age of like 12 just to play the piano. Pretty much, he got a scholarship, and it is really interesting what you're saying about playing people playing their door or playing keys because like we'll sit down and I'll play something and he's like that's completely theoretically wrong,
Mhm,
but it sounds great.
mhm.
And it kind of works in an electronic record or in a dance record or whatever type of genre, it works really well. But on paper, if you gave that to somebody that was classically trained, they could never play that because it just wouldn't make sense in their head.
You see, there's a benefit as well. I find that as well because I've kind of learned in a certain way, and I've learned kind of certain shapes. To actually move outside that is actually quite exciting. And you're exactly right. Sometimes I work with people, and they might just be playing on the actual, computer keyboard. Like people open Logic or Ableton, and they're just like playing on there, and they find different stuff that you wouldn't normally find. Yeah, I definitely follow certain shapes end up in certain places that I've been to before, and I have to consciously make an effort to try and move outside that.
Mm. Yeah, it must be really hard as well because you know what works for you, right? You know what works for your sound, and kind of we all we all get to a point. I've had it multiple times in my career where you kind of just end up making the same record,
Yeah, totally.
and you're like, how do you like how do you kind of get through that where you're like, okay, let's start fresh?
So I have loads of different ways of getting around that, and yeah, to fall into autopilot is actually very unrewarding, and it can
Yeah.
actually be quite draining finding yourself in that situation. So, I mean, creatively in the studio, I have lots of different ways of doing things. I'll decide to do things in a completely different way. I'll start with a completely different tempo. I'll work with a new load of sounds that I've never used before. It might be like just getting a new instrument in that you've never used before. You know, I've dabbled in kind of like doing tunes in Ableton. I've had MPCs, tried to like sequence stuff on there, had like Teenage Engineering OP1s, trying to do tunes on there, just trying to stay away from the autopilot section. But that requires effort. It does require effort. And you know, if you're tired or you're under pressure, like in a session, quite often I'll find if I'm under pressure in a session, there's nothing there. I'll quite often end up down a similar route, and that
Yeah.
basically it pisses me off, you know,
Well, I
and
think
it I don't think it really does me any good.
it then just makes the session completely obsolete because you're just like, well, I'm just making the same record that I wrote 20 years ago, and then
Yeah, and
what's the
not as
fucking
well,
point? Yeah,
usually.
exactly. Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's the thing as well. If you find something new, the first time you find something is always the best, I
Yeah.
think. You know, like going around, like you're saying, doing something that you did 10, 20 years ago, it's never going to be as good. So as long as you're
Yeah.
aware of that and you're prepared to take risks, and not risks, you're prepared to have fun and experiment and do like rando stuff. You know, I've had so many good things come from just random things. I'm kind of quite can be quite wild in on the computer as well. I'll do
Okay.
like have a session and just like get a sound shifter and pitch it all down an octave,
Mm.
get the whole thing, bounce it, reduce it by half, turn it upside down, reverse everything, you know, put a massive shimmer reverb over the whole thing, print that, reverse it, chop it into samples, just like go a bit mad with it and
Wow.
get a little bit kind of crazy in there, and then something good will pop out. But I mean, it's like you've got to experiment really to stay away from this autopilot mode.
Yeah, I think one thing that I found myself recently doing is if I'm in autopilot mode, I finish the record and then print that and then just completely delete the session and just go, okay, I love this vocal. I've made a record that sounds like a Will Clark record, but now how do I start from scratch and like not even think about trying to make a Will Clark record and just try and make a completely different record using
So
the
you
same
just take the
vocal?
vocal off from the session.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just
So you're
start a
treating
whole
it
new
like a
thing.
remix.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
I think that's a good way to do stuff. Like, I think if you've kind of made a record and it's got a vocal on it, going in to actually change that record is often a lot more work than like you say, just deleting it, starting with a fresh session. You've got a vocal at, you know, 130, 140, and then just starting again. Like saying, I'm going to use new instruments. I'm not going to start with drums. I'm going to start with just this sample. I'm gonna, you know, limit myself to not playing keys on the MIDI keyboard. I'm gonna use the computer keyboard. I've got
yeah.
an MPC here or a controller. I'm just gonna use the bits on that. You know, just try and kind of restrict yourself a little bit, and it will because there's nothing like it when you discover a new route and you're off. That's the buzz we're all after, right? It's when you find something you're like, yeah, man, I'm onto something here. I don't know where it came from, but I'm gonna ride it. You know, that's the buzz we're looking for. We're not looking for the yeah, I've kind of made a track that sounds 80% as good as something that I did before.
Yeah. Well, and you just know it. The minute you like click bounce, you're like, or export, it's like it's good. I can play this. It could come out. People would like it. But I think there's also a level of expectation from the audience, right? And I kind of want to get your perspective because you've been releasing music for such a long time. How have you felt the way the industry kind of tells you what you should and shouldn't be releasing? Has it always been the same? Because I guess what I'm saying now is like, okay, you've got streaming platforms which you almost have to kind of just release pretty much the same record to have a level of success just for playlists and things like that. And kind of is you're kind of in that rat race of like the algorithm, what people say, right? But again, you're out there releasing records all over the shop. Like I was literally just listening to Madrugada,
Oh, yeah, okay,
this
nice.
morning. How have you dealt with that over the years of, like, what the industry tells you and what you tell yourself?
Well, yeah, it's a tricky one because you kind of you grow up, you find your sound like we talked about earlier on. You find your sound, you're on it, you're kind of rinsing it. It's all exciting. You're trying different things, but it still sounds like the same thing. And then you might get to a radical point in your career where you're like, look, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to try something else. I had this when garage kind of died in the early noughties. I was like, right, I'm going to start a band. Started a band with a mate. I started making like house records. I started making kind of, techno record, really experimenting. And a couple of times I thought I was on to something and I might have a remix come in as an MJ Cole remix. And I do it in this like housey style. And they'd be like, it doesn't sound like you.
Yeah.
That's what they wouldn't say it's not good. They just say it doesn't sound like you. And
Mm,
that's kind of frustrating because you're like, I'm trying to innovate. I'm trying to not get away from what I've done before, but I'm trying to expand the horizons and keep myself interested and stretch myself creatively. And you guys really are just asking for some of the same. You're asking for autopilot,
pretty much,
So
yeah.
so yeah, there's this constant push pull going on. Um, and I think at times, I have succumbed to that, definitely. And at other times, I think I've kind of been quite innovative, moved away, and not necessarily been recognized for that as
Mm,
much. I think in your career, quite often it's like, look, I'm going to start a new name. It's going to be a new thing and start from scratch. You get excited about it. And then you realize that your name means quite a lot. The
yeah.
fact that, you have this tag on it, it means a huge amount. I mean, I've done a couple of things under different names and kind of had that idea where I thought, yeah, this is going to be fresh. It's going to pop off, because I'm used to it kind of popping off, and it just hasn't at all. So the Madrugada thing it's kind of like an exception. I mean, the Madrugada thing was like really me record because that was like me making the record my first album, but from my classical kind of
Mm,
side. So like that classical side never really got fully explored. It
yeah.
kind of went into my keys playing and the kind of garage and all that stuff. But when I made that record, it felt like I was making my first album again, but from the classical kind of side. So I think there was, I don't know, I think there was some like common thread there. People received that really well. I get the most nice messages about that record out of any record I've ever made,
I love it,
definitely.
man.
Thank you.
I'm a huge wow, I wouldn't say I'm a huge classical fan. I'm a huge piano fan. I went to see, I went to see so I live in Somerset, so there's Wells Cathedral School, which is, like, not far from me.
Oh yeah, so like a chorister's place, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
so they do, like, these I forgot what they call them, but in the it's absolutely mental, to be fair, like, all the parents club together and raise, like, 2.5 million for this like auditorium. And I watched Sir Stephen Hoff there a couple weeks ago, and it like just seeing a pianist at that level just play for 2 hours solid, and you're just like, this is unbelievable. I guess that's the truth, the true artist expression, right? Of what you're doing is you're releasing what you want and when you want. Is there ever that kind of question in the back of your head going, should I be releasing this? As much as you love it, should I be releasing this? Or because of the commerce side of the business?
Yeah, definitely. Like when I made the Madrugada album, I was really nervous about putting that out under my name.
Yeah.
So in the end, we ended up putting it out as MJ Cole Presents with the idea like it's me presenting a different side. But yeah, I had a couple of conversations with some like fairly established artists, and one of them was like, "Don't do it." Someone else did that. They changed their sound up, and it kind of killed their career. So I was kind of nervous about that, and we ummed and ahed about whether to call it something else and have a different artist name. The label were open to that. But I kind of decided that it was part of me, so
Yeah.
I felt it was kind of like the right thing to have my name on there, and I think it turned out all right with that. I think people kind of understood that that record was me as well, because it's kind of like you can hear, I guess, the same kind of musical background in there. You can hear the piano. The piano's throughout all my garage stuff anyway, in little bits and breakdowns, and the way I kind of play. But that was just kind of like leaning on that side a bit more. So, but yeah, I was super nervous about that.
Yeah, it's a battle that I've had for my whole career. Is that like obviously you evolve as a human being, not necessarily even just an artist, but you kind of go through phases of what you want to make and what you are making. I've had like probably 3 careers in one career where it's like I make this sound, I then make this sound, and then kind of move on to something else. And what I found is the only way to do it is just tell the story correctly to as many
Mm,
people as you possibly can, and kind of like once you think you've told them the story, keep telling them the story of why you're changing things, and eventually it kicks in, and then you find new fans, and it kind of grows. But it's a battle. And I think the last time I did it, I didn't tell the story correctly. And you see it.
right.
You see the downward trend of what happens, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. If you make something kind of outside to what people are expecting, you get a lot of people saying like, "What? Where's the?" If I was making like 4/4 records, even in the garage bin, I'd have quite a few moaners be like, "Where's the 2-step, man? It needs to be 2-step, or the other way round." Yeah, that can be kind of quite disconcerting as if you're a bit too open to the comments and stuff. But I think the important thing is that you make music that you want to make. And I've been lucky enough in my career to be able to mostly make the music that I want to make,
Mm,
and people have received that. um but yeah, if you start going down the route of what kind of music do people want me to make, I think that's a dangerous path to be
it's
on.
tough. It's really
Very,
tough,
very
right?
dangerous, and you just, yeah, looking over your shoulder the whole time.
If you are looking to get into the music industry, whether that's as a producer, DJ, songwriter, or you just want to learn more about the craft, Point Blank Music School is the place to do it. They've got courses both online and in person, covering everything you need to know to level up your skills. They've even just launched a brand new 2 and 4-year degree program in music production and audio engineering at the LA campus. And for you lucky listeners of this podcast, you can get 20% off selected courses when you use the code word WillClark20 at checkout. Hit the link in the description and use the code word WillClark20 at checkout. Point Blank Music School. Power up your music career, people. So I want to go back 2025 years of Sincere. Was it released in 2000 or was it released in 98?
The single Sincere first came out in 98,
Thought so,
and then the
yeah.
album Sincere came out in 2000
Mm, yeah,
with
yeah.
a slightly newer version of Sincere on
Yeah.
there, the re-queued one.
Yeah. So
Mm.
the re-queued one. What did you do on it differently? Was it
That was
mix downs?
a different mix down.
Yeah.
I just got it up on a different desk, got the bits up again, so it does sound slightly different. I think I did. So the first one, I mean, if you want to get techie about it, the first one did in my bedroom on Atari and like S1000, and then I mixed it in the studio where I made all the VIP records,
Yeah.
London Underground's kind of studio, Sour Studio in
Mhm.
Dalston.
Yeah.
And that was on like I don't know, what was it on, AMEC desk. I had certain bits of outboard there. And the 2000 version I did on an SSL in a different studio on a G plus with a load
Nice.
of different outboards. So yeah, different mix down basically.
Did you used to work at Sour Records?
Yes, that's
What
where I
was
started off. So when I
mm,
left college, I went for like T-boy jobs, and I got one at Sour. £50 a
mm.
week I was on.
It's not bad actually.
Travel card was 25.
It's who owns Sour?
That was some guys called Dave Stone and Norton.
Okay.
Those guys were running it then, and that's where I met Elizabeth Troy.
Yeah.
TriFX was signed to them. Met him there. Met my manager Cheese, who was like a lawyer for them. So yeah, that was kind of quite a formative time for me. But I was just, I was making teas, copying tapes, replacing cones and speakers and stuff. And I got into it because I ended up in some sessions just like making teas and assisting. And then they found out I could play keys, so they kept asking me to come back. Oh, can you play some keys on this, keys on that? And then I ended up engineering them, and that's kind of how I got in. But Sour was the beginning for me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing. So yeah, go back to Sincere. Comes out in 98, the single. When do you make it?
I think I probably made it in '98,
Yeah.
maybe '97. Not
And were
quite
you
sure.
like, what was before Sincere? Like, obviously you were at Sour, like, but what was before that? Were you touring around?
No,
What
I
was the
mean,
career
so
like?
when I made that record, I was I don't know when I made that. I probably made that around the time that I was making those VIP records, and they were really the first garagey things I'd ever made because I was just the engineer in the studio working with different DJs that came in from a pirate station called London Underground, and I was like a drum and bass head, like a jungle head, really. So I'd never even made anything at 1:30, but I kind of was forced to do it. Not forced, but that was the session, right? The guys walk in with a record box full of garage stuff. There's a turntable there, like little automated stuff like this. So, you get the sampler out, start sampling bits, listen to the drums, slow it down, discover there's like a little skip in there. So that's really how I got into it. And I reckon Sincere was probably made at home outside those particular sessions. So it was pretty early on, probably, yeah, 97, 98. I hadn't done a great deal of other kind of garage stuff before that, I don't think.
Were you DJing then as
Um,
well?
no, not at all. No, I only started DJing because of the records.
Yeah.
So that probably started in, I don't know, 98, 99, something like that.
What was that like? First
Um,
time DJing after having probably one of the biggest records in a genre.
yeah, it was cool. I mean, I grew up like being a bedroom DJ, and it was
Okay.
all hardcore records
So you could
and
mix beforehand.
yeah, 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 and it was all kind of jungle records, so it was a bit weird kind of playing these garagey things, and, I think my first gig was, like, in Eindhoven in Holland for some reason, and it was some, like, massive warehouse, and obviously I went there and just went straight to the coffee shop and got mash up, and then had to go and do my first gig ever in, like, a 2,000 capacity
Wow.
warehouse, like, yeah, mashed up, yeah, it was alright. And then, yeah, the DJ like, DJing's always been secondary to me,
Mm.
really, to making records, and that's how it first happened. I was making the records first, and I got invited to DJ because I'd had records out. It wasn't the other way around. Like, some other guys that I know, it's completely the other way around. Like, Miles MPH, for example, he started as a DJ, he loves being a DJ, but he also makes sick records now, but he's very much that way around. But, I'm certainly the other way around. I come from the studio and then, it's good to have a balance though. I like playing. It's good to play and it's good to be in the studio. I don't think, me just doing one without the other would be, great for me long term.
Yeah, for me, it was DJ first, and then records. When I realized that you had to to even have a career, pretty much going into the mid 2000s, that you had to write records, otherwise you're kind of screwed. How quickly did Sincere change your life?
Yeah, pretty quick. It was so I kind of signed that to a label called Metrics that was part of Vinyl Distribution in Reading.
Okay,
A guy called
I thought it was
Arthur
on
there.
Talking Loud.
No, no, no. The beginning, it was signed to a guy called Arthur who ran Vinyl Distribution
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Reading,
yeah.
and that was kind of like a big home distribution, for all the drum and bass guys, like all, metalheads and, all those guys were, selling their vinyl from there through those guys. But this guy Arthur discovered it. I played it on a cassette or something to him. He started up a new label called Metrics, and that was the first release on there. And then, I think what happened there, he did some white labels and, Pete Tong got hold of one of them, and then he made it I think he made the Essential Tune like 2 or 3 weeks in a row or something.
Wow.
I didn't even know who Pete Tong was. I didn't know what Essential Mix was, like none of that. But then I think that was really, where it kinda kicked off from Pete Tong's thing, playing that white. And then yeah, it started to go a bit mad. They wanted me to do an album, and then the majors got involved, and I think I kind of moved over from Metrics to Talking Loud. It was gonna be like London or Talking Loud, I think. So yeah, it went quite wild quite quickly. But I mean, I had spent quite a few years in the studio, like making records. It wasn't just like I made one record and I came out of Sainsbury's sort of thing. I've been crafting a lot, basically. I've spent most of my life in studios to the detriment of other things, I think sometimes.
Yeah, I can. We'll get into that later. There is the ability nowadays to write one record and your whole life completely change, and have only ever written that one record, or maybe a few other records before. But I feel like back in how it was, like you had to be a part of the culture. Like it was part of why we did it, right? Being a garage producer, a drum and bass producer, house techno producer, DJ. It wasn't cool thing to do. It was like kind of you had to do it. It was part of what you wanted to do, and was there really ever a thought that this is gonna be my full-time career for the rest of my life?
I always wanted to do music.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that I was always gonna be in music. I didn't necessarily know what that was gonna be. And at the beginning, when I left college, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be like a big SSL engineer in the big studios. And like, funnily enough, when I went for the T-boy jobs, I got offered a job at Metropolis Studios in Chiswick in London and also Air Studios in Hampstead. And I remember having this choice, like I could go and do it was like weekend night reception at Metropolis. So like the worst, basically you just work Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights and at Metropolis. Or I was gonna be like tape op, I think, at Air Studios. And then I had the kind of wild cards, which was, sour. I could go and do that, and I actually chose to go and do the sour one. There's been like quite a few crossroads in my life, but that I sometimes wonder what would happen if I'd have taken the job at Air Lyndhurst, and I would because I wanted to become an engineer, and then my idea was probably I'd become a producer after that. So yeah, to answer your question, I always knew that I wanted to do music. I wasn't really too concerned about what it would be, and that kind of just fell into place. But if you'd have asked me when I was, 15, 16, if you told me that in 10 years' time you're going to be like a housey, garagey person, I'd have laughed you out the room, because I was like, I wanted to be a, jungle bod
Yeah. Is
or an
there
engineer or producer with like leather trousers and hot and
chin
cold sushi.
chin stroking?
Yeah.
How many times have you wanted to quit?
Never.
Really?
No, never.
Really?
No, no, never. That's never crossed my mind. What, quit music?
Yeah. Or just
No.
like not quit music, but go like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Like,
No, I've never thought that once.
really? You're
No,
literally the first person that I've ever come across in my whole short-legged life on
really.
this podcast that has said no.
Yeah, that's never even crossed my mind. I think it's very strong from when I was young, that I was gonna be in music, and that was enough for me. Yeah, I've never thought I'm gonna pack it in. It's so much part of who I am. It's like, the way I express myself, So it's kinda like I need that as a human, let alone it's not just for commercial reasons, I need, that's my form of expression. That's kind of like my thought form of therapy. It just happens to be a lot of things in my life. It's obviously my career, income, but it's all those other things as well. So I can't really, I never really considered not doing that because it's very much part of who I am.
Do you ever struggle with the fact that it's your career and income as well? Is there those battles sometimes where you struggle with that?
I guess this kind of goes back a bit to the sort of creative thing, like feeling like you have to make a certain kind of record. Yeah, there's when you get financial kind of pressures in your life, I think that pressure becomes more to kind of deliver on a certain thing to earn the shreddies kind of thing. But mm, no, I don't really have a problem with that, like mixing the two. It's just been always part of my kind of the fabric of my life, really. And I think, I'm lucky enough to be able to experiment in certain areas as well and have the kind of facility to be able to do that and the, kind of the buffer to be able to do that as well. So no, they're very intertwined. And I guess you can get annoying the industry in itself that the fact is that you're kind of making this art and it's very much part of who you are. It's part of your expression, and then it gets treated like a, plastic bag, and it's sort of sold and pushed around and stuff like that. So I find that can be a little bit difficult, but I think they're just intertwined. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, because I think that's probably the best way to look at it, right? Is that there's nothing you can do to change the industry as an individual whilst being the artist, but it I don't know. Like, is there something that you can do to change? Is there or do you just accept it is what it is and roll with it?
I guess it depends what you want to do. There's people I know like Michelle Escoffrey who sang on
Mm,
like the Artful Dodger record. She's massive at the PRS now. I think she became, head of the PRS, which, is basically the songwriting organization that pays out royalties to songwriters in the UK. So people can do that. But I don't think you can necessarily do both. There's
yeah.
obviously people who are musicians making records that are quite active in certain areas. Um, but I think, to probably make a change, you might have to just down tools a bit and put on a different hat. But I don't that's not really part of what I do. I'm kind of very much focused on making records.
Yeah.
That's what I believe, that's what I'm like here to do. It's the thing that gives me the most pleasure. I think it's the thing that I'm best at doing. And so I'm going to get on and do that the best I possibly can.
What's a, like, weekly schedule in your life then?
It varies. It depends, if I've been on tour like this summer, because I was doing the live show all summer, it was very, very different. I was kind of traveling around, a lot of rehearsals, lots of set lists and dealing with that. But I'd say on the most kind of usual week, it would be, I've got a studio at home. I'd probably end up being in the studio probably like 10 till 6, something like that. Bits of boring admin here and there. I'm trying to like fence off my admin more at the moment. That's one of my current little projects. I'm trying to do like an hour of admin in a different place in my house on a different computer because otherwise, it just dribbles into the whole day and
It's a
it kind of
killer,
wrecks my
right?
thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I try and protect my creative space as much as I can. I don't know if I'm really that good at it, but a typical week will be like in the studio most of the day, and trying to keep the admin to a minimum. And then, if I'm at home, uh, and I'm working on something, it will just be there on a loop. I've got a little room at home, but I've got a studio in there, so it will just kinda always be there, and I might kinda dive back in the evening or even at night, early morning. But I've been using other studios in the town. I'm at Platoon Studios at the moment. I've been here
Yeah.
for, like, 8 days recently, and there's other studios that I've used. So I don't know, it kind of varies. Generally, I try and be in the studio making records unless I'm on tour, and I try and have some kind of like normal life outside that as well.
What is a normal life for you?
I'm into riding bikes. I've got a couple of kids,
Mm.
so just doing those kind of things really.
I wanna go back to what you said earlier, is how has being in the music industry affected positively and negatively the life of you?
Positively, in terms of my kids and stuff, it's been hopefully great for them. Or like I make tunes with my kids in the studio. We do like singing stuff. I kind of play things for them. We go through records. We have like listening sessions in the car. So I think my music for them has been positive in that way. I've started to take them along to a couple of gigs. So I played piano for Becky Hill at Wembley Arena, I think last year. Brought them along to that. Um, Actually, they came to a gig of mine in Brighton about, I don't know, about a month ago or 6 weeks ago or something. They came to that. So that's kinda like fun for them. And then what else is good, like positive? I mean, it's kinda handy, um, if someone's a fan of your music and, you're trying to get a tap fixed or something like that, it can be quite handy. So that's kinda like a benefit. They'll be, "Oi,
Yeah,
mate, you enjoy getting?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." He's, "Oh, mate, I love your music," and you might get a slightly
a
better
bit of a discount.
upgraded washer on your tap. And then negative wise, I guess the kind of like late nights traveling around, a slightly erratic schedule. Um, but Generally, I think I'm at a good level. It's not like I'm recognized anywhere. It doesn't really impede me being like a normal human, and I'm kinda happy with that level. I do get, kind of recognized, but only really by specialist people who are, like,
Yeah.
in the know, and I kinda like that level. I'd never wanna be like a celeb or anything like that,
Mm.
but it's nice to get a little bit of, low-key recognition here and there. So I think that's kinda like a positive and not a negative too much.
I think is the best thing about what we do, right, is that although it's listened to by so many people and it's such a big audience in the grand scheme of like populations, but it's also still tiny. Like the nightclub, how many nightclubs are there in each city nowadays? How many people are actually listening to this music? And even when you look at festivals, like you compare yourself to like even look at Calvin Harris, say, and then you compare it to Taylor Swift, and you're just like complete worlds apart.
Mm.
I think that's the thing we're very lucky with is that like we still get to live a very normal lifestyle. I go to the local village shop and the lady that works in there is like, "Are you still doing the music thing?" And it's like, it's yeah. Whereas if you're a pop star, you just don't get the ability to do that, right?
Mm. I find that question like quite grating when people say that. You see people like, "Oh, mate, you're still making the music?" As though I'm going to say like, "No, no, no, I packed it in. I'm
I'm
like
a plumber
electrician
now.
now."
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
When you're so in music and like I've been telling you earlier on, it's like I could never consider doing anything else. It's kind of quite grating when people say that, and but that's actually makes you realize the power of like major record labels and stuff. Like when I was on a major and I was on like billboards and doing the awards and stuff like that, I was kind of recognized. And as soon as that dropped away and it became a little bit more underground, I was doing like
Yeah.
my club nights, had my label, people don't see you as much, right? So they
Mm.
think you're not doing it anymore. And that's kind of frustrating as a musician.
I yeah, I hear that. Like I did a session with somebody once, not so long ago, and their wife was there. Like it was at their house, and I was talking about like the ups and downs of the career and everything like that. And her response was, "Well, if you stop now, like you've had a good run, if you know what I mean." And that
Right.
that annoyed me the most. And
Yeah, I can, yeah.
in a sense of like, but then I also like processed it and I step back and go, "Oh, you've just you've never been fortunate enough to have to be passionate enough about something that you
Mm,
have to do." Like, there's
mm,
no yeah, sometimes it's a drag. Sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes I do wanna quit, if you know what I
mm,
mean, but,
mm,
like, I don't, and I haven't for the last 20 years
mm.
because there's something in me that I'm like, I don't want to do anything else,
Mm. I
and
I I I think
yeah.
people, sorry to butt in. I think, on the outside, some people think that you live this, perfect life because you get to, like, mess around in your studio playing
Yeah.
with your toys, that it's all kinda easy, that you just knock out tunes and they all come out really well and well received, but as you and me probably both know, there's some really terrible times that I've had in studios, like kicking doors in, like deleting everything, just saying that I definitely wanted to give up on projects or tunes. I've had loads of remixes where just hasn't kind of gone right, and I tried it 5 different ways, and actually, yeah, just deleted the whole thing. But then I've always come back, and it's been all right. But I'm just kind of saying that that person probably just thinks that I don't know, it's kinda like this idyllic life, but also, I guess they're treating it more like, "Oh, you started up a business, the
Mm,
business did quite well, I know you're gonna try another business," but
yeah.
it's not kinda like that for us, I don't think.
Well, I think it's like I think we're in this really weird time where the rhetoric is you can be successful overnight.
Mm,
And I just don't I think that's just permeated through culture generally. And I just don't think people know the reality that nothing that's nothing that's got great foundation is built overnight, and nothing that's extremely successful is built overnight.
unless you're the Ibiza final boss.
Unless you're him, but that haircut took many years to kind of perfect. And I think that's the thing though, isn't it? Is like, yeah, you could have a splash in the pan of like success, but
Mm,
like, how do you make that last for a whole lifetime? And that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do, at
I think
least.
you're right. Yeah, you need the foundations and the roots to kind of support that.
Mm.
Mm.
So what are you doing to celebrate 20 years?
We are so obviously I've done the live show this year, but I kind of unearthed some of the tunes, done like new live versions of them, so that's been fun. And we have some plans to release some records as well. I won't say any more than that, but
Mm.
yeah, it's kind of like it seems like quite a good time to revisit some of
Yeah.
that the older stuff. So yeah, we're doing that, but at the same time, I'm actually in the middle of like a 8-day stint of writing new music with different people, so that's kinda going on. My management will tell you I'm not really a look back person at all. I'm not really into doing stuff again. I feel like I made those records and I did it at that time. I did a good job. They've done well. I'm on to new stuff, but, they've kind of persuaded me to, go back. But, justification was that look, it's 25 years, the right time to do it. So I am willingly participating in that. But there's some quite fun stuff to come. Some of the older records have been rejuvenated and they've had a little visit from some very current people, is all I'd say at the moment.
Nice. That's what
Mm,
I like to hear.
mm.
Let's talk about a live show. I did a live show last year, which was my first live show ever, and it's a lot of work
Yeah,
when
man.
in comparison to rocking up with a bag of vinyl or a USB stick, even more so.
Oh, yes.
Is this your first one, or have you done many over the years?
I did a live thing right at the beginning. I did like, Jules Holland and we did, North Sea Jazz Festival. I think supported Ronnie Size and Represent on a
Yeah,
like a UK tour in Europe. But that was right at the beginning. So I haven't really done a live show since then. And yeah, you're right. It's a lot of work. Really rewarding. I think I find it more satisfying. I like playing keys basically. So if I get to play keys on stage, I'm happy. And so the live shows enable me to do that. And it's been fun, like going around all these festivals. We did like Glastonbury, Boomtown, Latitude, We Out Here, all these kind of festivals. It was super cool. We Out Here was wicked at the end. We had like headlined on Friday,
dope.
and really good crowd there. It was kind of quite a nice full circle moment because obviously it's Giles Peterson's,
Yeah,
festival, and he was kind of like behind the record at the beginning, so it felt like a good one. But yeah, the live show's been super fun. But you're right, it's a lot of work, and I had to go back. Because a lot of these tunes were from the late 90s and I never ran parts or
no,
stems or anything like that. So there was a lot of detective work. I had to go back, get archives out, buy stuff off eBay, zip drive, SCSI
really.
reads, yeah,
Oh
like
wow.
floppy disks, trying to downgrade systems, find old Macs that ran Logic 3 or 4,
Yeah.
all of that. It was kind of it was massive load of work to get that done, but
Mm.
um it was fun. It was fun. And I think the live show is gonna continue into next year
There's
as
something
well.
that I love about electronic live shows. I wish we saw more of them. Like the chems have always been like the ones for me. And even I grew up. My first show was seeing Faithless live back in 2001, and there's something about electronic done live is special. Live music for me is really special generally. How much does it cost?
Oh man, it costs too much. It costs too much. It's just people don't really realize. I know people talk about this on the net, but when you've got humans on stage, obviously they all need paying and I
Yeah,
want to pay them. And there's also rehearsals you have to think about. Everyone has to get to the show. And then, you have to have a tour manager. If it's far away, everyone has to stay overnight. It costs a lot of money. And I think actually I'm probably doing like, I don't know, total of 12 shows this year. And I'm not making a penny
yeah.
out of any of them at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I did
Mm.
6 and lost copious amounts of money. We're so weird. This is the thing about the music industry, right? There's the level of, like, we have to do this, right? And we wanna, right, make music and all of that, but then there's the business side of it, and it's the business side feels like such a gamble
Mm.
It doesn't feel like a business unless you're the record label person or unless you're the manager or you're unless they're the agent where it's almost guaranteed cash.
Yeah.
Let's say, for instance, like the live show, right?
Mm.
Like if you went to a business person,
Mm.
you sat down with him and go, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, I'm going to go do 12 shows. It's going to cost me 100 grand and I'm going to bring in 90 grand.
Yeah.
So there's a loss of 10 grand. Do you think it's worth it? 90% of business people will go, "F that, take your
Mm.
USB sticks and your
Mm.
keys and
Mm.
rock out yourself
Yeah. Do a
and make 90 grand," right?
Yeah.
But there's something in us as without sounding wanky, as artists, like, that we're
Mm.
like, "Nah, we'll
Yeah,
lose that money."
exactly. Yeah, I'm the same. I think, like I talked about before, I really want to be able to be on stage and play keys and like perform the music that I made. That kind of it makes a lot of sense to me. If you speak to my management, the way they sold it to me, because at the beginning I'm like, look, you do a massive budget, and there's a final bottom line figure, and it's like minus something. And I'm like, why would it do that? And their justification for that is, look, this is the beginning of the live show. Once you've got a live show, it's there. And then if you do these festivals this year, then next year you can do slightly bigger slots. And they're trying to kind of say to me that, you will be able to make some money from it at some
Eventually,
point.
yeah.
But the reason I said yes to it and the reason I'm doing it is because I've loved doing it, and I've loved like being on stage with people and playing keys, and actually it's felt worthwhile, definitely. But yeah, I agree, from a business point of view, it's just rubbish unless you're filling big arenas. It's all to do with the size of the place you're playing, right?
Totally.
If you're doing like 1,000, 1,500 caps, you're probably not going to make any money. It depends what your setup is. But if you start doing bigger ones, then you can start to earn some change, apparently.
You're 100% right. Like, we were doing, like, 500 to 1,000, 1,500 caps, and you're like, "Okay, like, when does the balance sheet go into the black," I guess. But yeah, that's kind of why I was like, I just don't think I can physically carry on doing this I will do this eventually. Eventually, that's the big goal, but you almost need to be selling 10,000 tickets for it to make sense.
And the temptation, obviously, to whip out the USBs is so great. That's what happened to me the first time round. We did this tour, and it was all great, and it made no money at all. And it got to the stage where they're like, "Look, do you want to do a live show here and lose money,
Yeah.
or do you want to, take a box of records as it was then and make money?" I went for the latter in the end. But now I kind of see it that this year I've been doing a combination of both, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think I've actually enjoyed DJing a bit more having done the live shows, or knowing that I've got live shows as well, because it's kind of like scratched a different itch for me. I haven't felt
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just playing, you know, pre-produced records, other people's
Yeah.
records. And it's kind of actually fed my DJing a little bit as well, as I've gone back and got the stems, all these bits. I've done some like specials. It's given me some ideas, and I think I've been a bit more comfortable with playing more of my own records DJ wise now, which I
Mm.
never really was. I used to play majority other people's records, maybe like 10% mine, but I think more recently I've maybe been playing half or something like that. And I think the live shows kind of like encourage that a little bit. So they feed into each other. We're trying to nourish. That's the thing, as musicians with all this stuff. It's feeding into everything we said, really. It's like the business side versus the being a musician, satisfying yourself as a human. They all feed into each other, right? You do a
Yeah.
live show, it gives you a vibe. You take that into the studio. Maybe part of that live experience has ended up being in a brilliant record that's made you feel good. You had a great time in the studio doing it. You maybe lost money on the live show, but it's given you something somewhere else. And I
Mm.
think in the way we are as musicians at the moment, you have to do lots of different things, and that's okay. It's not like, I'm not DJing, I'm not going to do live, I just make this kind of record. I think it's cool to be like, do you know what? I'm going to make a piano thing. I'm going to do DJ gig here. I'm going to do this live show. It's it's okay to have like a pie chart of different elements, and that makes you a musician, and they all feed each other as well if you do them right.
100%. I think it's super important. I think it's super important. The new age of garage is coming through, or it's through
Mm,
right now, bigger than ever to a certain extent. Sammy Verji, MBH, even to like the likes of Fred again to a certain extent.
mm.
How does it feel?
Yeah, I mean, I love those guys. They're cool. I worked with a lot of them. I did a track on Sammy's album, Doctor, with him. Done stuff with Miles, MPH, like Hold On, that came out like last year. Um, and I've, worked with IPC and, people like Salute and all those kind of guys, Parallel. I think they're great, man. They've really brought something new to it that I love playing their records. It's kind of like come from it just feels a little bit kind of more sprightly and colorful, the music that's
Yeah.
coming from those guys. So I think it's great, and they're like super nice guys as well, which is
Mm.
great.
Yeah, I had Miles on here a few months ago, and he's great. He's actually just worked on a record with me as well.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah, he's
Very
he's a
talented
great
geezer.
guy, a great guy.
Mm,
Let's wrap this up. Last question, which is obviously a bit of a standard one. Life advice.
I didn't know this was coming, by the way, so I have to think about this. My life advice, I think it's got to be just stay true to yourself and do the things that you want to do, but don't be scared to do some random stuff too.
Love it.
That's
Love
what I'd
it.
say. Yeah.
Dude, congrats on everything. Thank you for the music over the
Thanks,
last
man. Likewise,
ever.
big fan of your tunes as well.
Thank you, man. Appreciate
Come
it.
on, bro.
Yeah, hopefully catch up in person and
Yeah, wicked, man.
see you soon.
Take
Peace.
care. Thanks,
Thank
Will.
you, mate.
See
Stay
you,
on,
mate.
mate.